Hello again everybody, so today I'm back and today I'm going to be doing something that I've started doing more regularly on this channel, and that's a book tag. So today I kind of was thinking, I've had a conversation with one of my friends over the past few days about the emotions that books bring out in you, and I thought that's a really interesting thing for a tag, and I knew someone would have made one at some point. So I managed to find a tag made by Padfootandprongs, who I'll link in the description down below, which is an emotions tag. And basically there's a list of emotions, and for each one I'm going to pick the book that for me kind of most highlights that emotion, that most made me feel that way. So it's a really interesting mixture of books actually. To try to decide some of these emotions was difficult, but it's a really interesting tag and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys think about it. So the first emotion is happy. So actually I found this really difficult because a lot of the books that I read are very much based on conflict and generally people not being happy. And while a few of them have got happy endings, there's normally a bitter note to them. So there aren't many books that have left me feeling really uplifted. And then I remembered there's one book. Now, this is controversial because when I first did my review of this book, I talked about how it made me cry numerous times. I spent the last 200 pages literally just sobbing my way through it. But the feeling which you finished the book, that final note, is so happy and so uplifting that it's the one for me that is the most happy reading experience I've had in a long time. That's The Art of Being Normal by Lisa Williamson. So I've talked about this a lot, I've done a full review about how much I love this book. It's about a pair of teenagers, and the main character is a boy who identifies as a female, and it's about him trying to deal with those issues and how that fits into his life with his family and at school, and it's so heart-wrenching and there's such amazing relationships in it. But the very last note and the whole message of the book is so uplifting, it just had to be my pick for happy book. In terms of sad books then, I read quite a lot more of these. A lot of books, if you've been watching this channel, you'll know are about kind of death and morbidity and illness and losing people, and it's really, a lot of the stuff I read is really dark. But actually, the book that's made me the most sad is When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi, and that's because this is a really personal story. A lot of the kind of stories about medicine and death are told from a physician's perspective, whereas this is so directly, it's from the guy himself that sadly died and his wife, and that personal touch really makes it really hit home. It's about a neurologist who, in his last year of residency in America, discovers he's got terminal cancer, and it's about him facing that and then his family afterwards, and it's, as you can expect from that description, it's really sad, but it's a really amazing book as well, and it's one that definitely has uplifting elements to it, but it's definitely quite crushing and it's really, really depressing actually, and I definitely advise everyone read it, but just to be warned, you will cry just like I did. Now, of all the emotions involved in this tag, the next one, anger, was the most difficult for me. I don't find many books make me angry unless it's because I'm disappointed with how good they are, but that kind of comes under other emotions. Took me a long time to decide, but I've picked Nothing Is True and Everything Is Possible, and this is a kind of memoir based in modern Russia. So modern Russia obviously is quite a controversial place anyway. A lot of their kind of human rights policies and their political stance is quite alien to us, and so it's kind of antagonised quite a lot. But this was a really interesting eye-opening book. But actually it delves into quite a lot of really personal stories from residents of Russia, different cities across the country, and so much of the stuff that they live through, they deal with, makes you so angry. And I know for a fact that there would be things in the UK that a Russian person would have similar feelings about. It's just because it's quite a different culture to ours. It really hit home for me, and so much of this made me really angry and seething, and I'm really glad I read it because it's been quite eye-opening and added a real personal element to the kind of my opinion of Russia as a country, but it definitely left me feeling really, really angry at many points, and it is interesting but infuriating. This next one was actually also very difficult, but mainly because I had so many books to pick. The next emotion is nostalgia. So basically for me this harkens back to the books I read when I was young, the books that have kind of defined me as a reader, and there's tons I could have picked. There's things by Enid Blyton, there's the Red Wall series, Harry Potter, so many things that have really stuck with me. But for me, my go-to book from my childhood is Sabriel by Garth Nix. So I've read this book 3 or 4 times now, and it was the first kind of teenage-y fantasy book I read, and for years fantasy is pretty much all I read after this. I've kind of diversified now, but still I have such a fondness for this genre, and it's all because of this book. Whenever I read it, I'm transported to being a 13-year-old boy again, and getting to meet the author really brought that all home. But it's really, really interesting that this book brings up such passionate feelings of being a teenager for me. And definitely of all the books I've read, this is the one that brings the most nostalgia back. So the book that made me scared is Bird Box by Josh Malerman. So this is a book that's really picked up steam since it was published and continues to be quite popular even now. And basically there isn't much information about it, but the general concept of the book is the world, for whatever reason, it's not really explained very much. If you leave your house, if you're outside, you cannot open your eyes for fear of dying. And the fact that it doesn't really explain it is part of what makes it terrifying. But it's also sensory, and the fact that obviously they start off in a house and they have to leave the house for multiple reasons. And it is that the motion, the fact they have to move, brings up so many confrontations and so many like really, really tense moments. And because it's so sensory and because it relies so much on other things other than sight, it's fascinatingly written and it really gets under your skin. It's one that I really enjoyed. One of my colleagues raved about it and it scared the life out of me. And that's something books don't do very often, but this really did it. So next up is actually a book which I physically don't own because I read this on my Kindle years and years and years ago. And the emotion this most epitomises for me is surprise. So that for me could have meant one of two things, either a book that really unexpectedly impressed me or a book that had the most monumentally mind-blowing twist expected. So I've kind of gone with a bit of both. The book is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. So actually my first encounter with this book was hearing about the author's political views. Basically he's a bit of a douche and I disagree with pretty much everything he believes. So I wasn't entirely convinced going into reading the book that I was going to enjoy it, but at the same time it's kind of a sci-fi young adult epic, which is exactly some of the stuff I really enjoy. Decided to take the plunge, and not only did I love the book, but also it has got the best twist in literature as far as I'm concerned anyway. It is the #1 twist. So on both fronts it surprised me to no end. And if you've not read it, even if you've heard about Orson Scott Card's questionable ideas, give it a read because it's a fascinating read. This next one is going to be controversial, and that's disappointment. So, for me, I was really excited about reading this book, and actually, overall, it was a bit of a disappointment. I know a lot of people have said similar things, but a lot of people also really love it, so I'm intrigued to see what you guys think. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. So obviously there's going to be a film this year, so there's been a lot more hype around it again. And the thing that drew me to this is A, it looks creepy as, and B, it's got these really cool black and white photos that it incorporates as part of the story. It really doesn't follow up on that. The concept's amazing, but the book itself is actually just a bit bland. It's a very much recycled kind of young adult fantasy story. Tries to be a bit creepy, doesn't really succeed. It's a bit off the wall, but it just didn't leave any lasting impression with me. I've got the second on my shelf and I just have no desire to read it. And after such a promising start, such a promising concept, and such a promising package of the book itself, it was a real disappointment that I didn't enjoy it more. This next one actually is the one that I straight away, as soon as I read the emotion, I knew what I was going to pick, and that's distressed. So that's quite a strong word, and actually of all the books I've read, the one that's distressed me the most is Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. So I'd never seen the film, I'd never really read anything about the book, I knew it was a bit controversial, decided to take a plunge, me and a few of my friends read it at the same time. My God, this is a slightly traumatising book, and that's really underselling it. There's a lot of really graphic, unexpected, violent, discordant scenes in this. So many things that just really, really make your skin crawl a little bit. And it's a fascinating book. I'm really glad I read it, and I think it's one that a lot of people should read. But at the same time, reading it can be quite an unpleasant experience because there is so much about it that is that unpleasant. As soon as I read Distressed, I knew it had to be this book, and I think it'll take a lot to ever top that. Now, the last one is Confused, and again, I was struggling to work out how to take this, but actually, the book that has left me with the most confusion, and that confused me the most while I was reading it, is Elizabeth is Missing. So actually, this is an advanced reading copy, so the cover doesn't look like the normal cover, but this has been a really popular book, and essentially it's about an old woman, Elizabeth, who's starting to show symptoms of Alzheimer's, and she's convinced that her friend Elizabeth has gone missing. And because the protagonist, it's all from her perspective, has got this Alzheimer's setting in, It's designed to be really confusing and disorientating, and strands just fade away, and something new gets picked up, and you'll come back to it later, but you won't know what it means, and it's just really interesting, and it's so well done. You really get into the mindset of the character, and it does leave you confused, but that is a really good thing, not a bad thing. It's designed to leave you confused, and it does such a good job with it. There we have it, my emotions book tag. So it's a really good mixture of emotions, and to be fair, you could easily do a second tag full of a whole host more emotions. But those are a really interesting mixture of books, and there's a lot of stuff there that I've talked about that I've not actually talked about on this channel before. So it's been really good to be able to talk about those things and kind of show you a little bit about what gets me going with different types of books and what things really grate on me or really impress me. I'm going to leave a little list again of booktubers I'm a big fan of who I'd love to see do this tag as well. The tag was originally done in 2012, so I'm dragging something up from the depths here, but I'm really intrigued to see what people think, what books they'd pick. And also, comment down below, any of you who've not got a channel or don't fancy doing a full video, let me know what you'd pick for some of these, because I think it's a really interesting discussion to have. As always, a like and subscribe is really appreciated if you have enjoyed it. It means a lot to me. And other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with my next video.